Autism in adulthood. So for the last presentation, it's only right we discuss autism in adulthood and how they deal with society and their expectations. In this article, a conceptual analysis of autistic masking is a relatively new phase called autistic masking, which can also be referred to as adaptive morphing, camouflaging, and/or compensation. Masking is where an autistic individual acts in ways they think they are normal or socially acceptable in order to be accepted by society. For the most part, we have or might have known someone who tried to fit in with the crowd, to be more liked. For neurotypical people, this can cause major stress. So let's think about it for a minute about an individual on the spectrum who typically already faces many challenges, such as maintaining eye contact or having sensory issues, and etc. This will definitely be a major stress for them. When suppressing natural responses such as cognition, movement, sensory experience, and behavior can link to several negative effects for these individuals, such as suicidality, burnout, and relationship-oriented issues. Neurodivergence. This article goes on to further state that many autistic individuals experience neurodivergence, which simply means their brain processes, learns, and/or behaves differently from what is considered typical. From a medical perspective, autism had been historically conceptualized from the disability or other's perspective, but it always has been framed as a need for an intervention or a cure. Autism was always viewed as needing an intervention. Traits that are deemed autistic are viewed negatively and not considered part of the human condition. This is what leads society and academic to view autistic individuals as people who need to be cured or not as proficient as the rest of the neurotypical individuals, which in result leads to dehumanization, marginalization, and stigma. Which leads me to my first question. What societal changes could be suggested when it comes to educating neurotypical individuals to reduce this negative perception of these traits? Researchers have shown that the stereotypical traits associated with autism, neurotypical individuals rated 80% of these negative. One of the co-authors, Dr. Rose, further explains how the difference in the normal way autistic people communicate and move, understand, or ways they struggle to empathize results in neurotypical people pathologizing and including autistic individuals. Unfortunately, this paves the way for victimization and bullying, emphasizing the need to explore the social context and the stigmatization of autistic people in pivotal understanding and hopefully reducing autistic masking. From an autistic perspective, the ideologies surrounding social identity, in a sense, push autistic individuals to who want to fit in pass as normal. This helps them navigate in a stigmatizing world or by avoiding external consequences such as bullying if they are not already dealing with internal consequences such as burnout and exhaustion. The author goes on to explain the development and maintenance of masking are directly linked to the social sphere. This sheds light on the self-perception theory, which goes on into detail explaining how others' perception creates a vision on how they would like to show the world, while also concealing certain things from the world. In the lens of a Black scholar, Du Bois' writings on double consciousness dives in the realities of being Black in America. He goes on to add the need to suppress one's identity and having to look at one's self through the eyes of another. This leads to the discrepancy between the expected versions of oneself and the individual's idea, then give birth to cognitive dissonance, which simply means to have inconsistent thoughts, belief, or attitude changes. This end results develop stress that have major psychological effects that can be linked to suicidality, similarity to the case with autistic individuals trying to pass as normal. Strategies that can be implemented to successfully mask elements of one's self are not sustainable long term. The result, distress and cognitive dissonance, have to be resolved. When it comes to unmasking, introspective disconnection would have to take place in order to be considered feasible. Alexithymia. Alexithymia. Alexithymia is having difficulty identifying, describing, and expressing emotions. So I'm just going to repeat the definition for you guys again on alexithymia. So it's pretty much having difficulty identifying, describing, and expressing emotions. So now that you guys have the definition on hand, once again, I have another question for you guys. With alexithymia having a 50% prevalence on the autistic population, could interventions like ABA therapy be contributing factors, since aspects of this therapy includes positive reinforcement, which may require subconscious dismissal of cognitive dissonance? So that's something you guys can think about, and you guys can get back to me. So my apologies, guys. The way that I read the word was incorrect, so I am going to reread the question again. With alexithymia having a 50% prevalence of the autistic population, could interventions such as ABA therapy be contributing factors, since aspects of this therapy includes positive reinforcement, which may require subconscious dismissal of cognitive dissonance? So hopefully with all those thoughts and answers, I will reveal what I have. So finding difficulty in identifying one's emotional state is, and distinguishing them from bodily states, which is referred to as alexithymia, is also a defense mechanism related to the subconscious dismissal of cognitive dissonance. Its prevalence is about 50% of the autistic population, and because of the nature of this condition, one may only realize that their stress levels are dangerously high when they are at the breaking point, since they would have not been able to self-regulate. This suppression of internal states to maintain eternal safety can also be related to Du Bois' double conscious theory. So for the next slide, I do have one more question for you guys. So, in your own opinion, do you think masking could be more prevalent in women because of pre existing gender discrimination that, in a sense, forces women to want to fit in? So, the article also did look into masking from a gender perspective, and it has been found that women show fewer characteristics of autism in comparison to men. So, when combining the aspects of autism, like the extreme male brain, it had shed more light on why women may present less of these traits. And also, the author had argued that the notion that masking is not necessarily a core trait of autistic women, and that the intersectional aspects of play and gender expectations also play a role in one's development. And it may also inform the ways their autistic traits manifest. And therefore, the idea of masking is commonly done by women is not necessarily accurate. While the article did highlight some negative aspects of masking, researchers are also finding out that there may be some positive impacts on autistic individuals' well being that comes from masking. And there are future recommendations that are shared on how researchers are working on ways to improve the lives of autistic individuals. Another strength that was provided was that the article had supporting evidence from autistic people's perspective, and therefore it highlighted the live experience of stigma from a personal perspective. However, one of the weakness of this article is that while it did mention ideas of how masking could be beneficial, it does not present an objective perspective with possible advantage of the phenomenon. So, how evidence from this article could be applied to improve the lives of autistic people? So, with the knowledge that a large number of autistic people face stigma that results in them masking their autistic traits, educating the neurotypical population could be centered on specifically addressing attitudes towards the typical autistic traits that are perceived to be inferior. And here are my references, and this concludes my presentation. Thank you.